Well, we are recording.
Yep.
So, welcome everybody to Geddry Jurich. And this is our fledgling podcast. And I'd turn it over to Israel and let him introduce himself.
Well, I'm Israel Jurich. Sorry, we're going to go by the J sound so that the names go together. I'm Israel Jurich, and really excited to have Mary Geddry and joining us for conversations. We're just going to have this podcast for as long as it's wanted in the community, and I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited to have, even though our first audience. I'm really glad that you're joining us to listen or view the show, and excited that Mary invited me to be part of this project. So, yeah.
Well, I'm really grateful to you for joining me because I didn't want to do it all by myself. So not yet anyway. Someday I might do something on my own.
So a little about me. I've been living in the Coos area since 2015. I came here to be a pastor at a Lutheran church in North Bend. I love the area. I grew up in Astoria as a kid and near Astoria. So the Oregon coast has, just always been home for me, climate, culture, all of that. And moved away from the coast for college and graduate school and everything. And so getting to come back here it's been it's an exciting opportunity. And it didn't take me long when I moved here to feel right at home and to feel like, oh, I can really make this place, a place to live and to grow and to thrive. And falling in love with the area also meant, the people as well. I really love our community. I really want everybody who is here to thrive and to not in every way, to just have safe, secure, and happy lives. And so that's just been one of the things that has kept me here and has kept me involved in the community. As a pastor, I was working with a number of communities, working with people in need in a variety of ways, whether it was economic needs or social needs or things like that. And got connected with services for people who are unhoused, provided services for people who are hungry, also got connected up with the LGBTQIA plus community. And so these are communities and folks whose needs I'm passionate about. And also, of course, everyone who lives here. It's just a wonderful place to be and to live, and it's just a beautiful area. And so I hope it continues to be for many years to come.
Yeah, me too. Well, I moved here in 2003, kind of escaped a situation in California and didn't know a soul, not one soul when I moved here. And came here with my two little girls, and they're grown and graduated, and one's married with a baby now, so a lot happens in 20 years. And along the way, I started blogging, and primarily because my son went to war, and I just needed an outlet, and because I'm, don't like war, and then I began to realize that I didn't really have much sway on those larger issues, but there were a lot of really local issues, like right here, where I had a perspective. And so I started blogging about the way the local police department was treating people, and I gathered a lot of viewers, readers, and then after a period of time, I started going to city council meetings and county commission meetings, and I became aware just how much our lives can be impacted by the decisions of two or three people who may or may not really know what they're doing, and
Mm-hmm.
or have just an unsophisticated view of issues, sort of a dogmatic perspective rather than like a like any real critical thinking. And so I started blogging more and more, and actually for a period of time there, I had quite a readership, and then my girls went to college, and I took a break because I had to I had to make more money while they were in college,
Mm-hmm.
and then I got motivated again. It's sort of a personal issue happened, which kind of motivated me, and I just remembered I really enjoyed writing about local things and just helping people see things from another perspective. What I was reading in the newspaper was just very dry. You know, they voted yes on this, they voted no on that. There wasn't like any analysis for people to look at and say,
Mm-hmm.
well, how does that really impact me? And
Mm-hmm.
what was the thought process behind them making those decisions and so forth. And so I love research. I really
Mm-hmm.
like research, and I like figuring things out. And so um, I got deep into that. And then, as I got back into blogging again, I became aware of all the things that are happening with what I consider to be this religious fascism, I guess is
Mm-hmm.
the right way to put it. And that we've got some pretty serious um, concerns about white Christian nationalism in the area, and some not just extreme views, but fringe views, and and so I'm all about social justice and economic justice and environmental justice, and
Mm-hmm.
they seem to be kind of in conflict with some of these views and perspectives. And so I'm hoping that you all and me, that we can help break some of that down and help people become informed about
Mm-hmm.
what's really going on, because a lot of people have very busy lives, and it's not like they can go to every commission meeting and listen, read every report. But
Mm-hmm.
I actually enjoy doing stuff like that. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. This is
yeah,
I mean, this little project with our podcast is kind of an opportunity to put out there another public voice that I think is going to be um, more interested in discussing local issues, discussing needs and concerns, as well as some of the positive stuff that's going on in our community, um, in a way that isn't going to reflect the kind of reactionary dogmatism that we're hearing from those fringe outrage outlets that we have in our area. So I think it's an opportunity for us to change the conversation a bit, to bring, I think, some reason and some calm, rational input on the issues that our community faces, um, and also to inspire our audience and educate our audience on some of the things that are going on and how that impacts all of us and what we can do about it and how we can think about it in ways that that allow us to resist some of these uh, anti-democratic, anti-science, anti-freedom kinds of views that we're hearing from the far right. And I'm not to say that this show will just be entirely about the conflict between our community and the far right groups, but I think you did note that we are facing a unique time in our history in our community, and we are facing some serious pushes from fringe groups to try to mainstream their ideas and take control of our community and its institutions, and to force those ideas on the community at large that doesn't necessarily share them and is not going to benefit from them. So I think
Yeah, right.
having this podcast, having it be a pro community, pro democracy, progressive perspective on local issues can be really valuable.
Well, I think so. And I think probably we should. You actually gave me a good explanation the other day, so I don't want to lean on you too heavily tonight. But one of the things we wanted to define was what we mean or what we think pro-democracy really is. And I think you had a good explanation the other day, so if you don't mind
Yeah, I'd
repeating
be
that.
happy to share that with you again. I think one of the things that we all, when we think of democracy, our mind automatically goes to, free and fair elections, that everybody gets a vote, everybody has a voice, and I think that that's an essential component of democracy. It's an essential component, but that alone doesn't make for a democracy. A democracy, a democratic community, is one that serves the interests of every single person who is part of that community. Um, it's not enough just for everyone to have, a vote. It's not enough just to have free and fair elections. But it's also important that the people that we elect to office and the policies that they implement are people and policies that serve the interests of the entire public rather than just a select interest group. And so when we talk about being a pro-democracy project, we of course are going to be emphasizing the importance of free and fair elections and protecting those from all the encroachments against that we see coming from the far right. But we also want to be focusing on the interests and needs of every person in the community, not just a select group. So what it means for us to be pro-democracy and progressive means that we are interested in the success and well-being of people who might disagree with us ideologically, but that doesn't make them less a part of our community. And we want to make sure that our community is a place where they can thrive, where they can be economically successful, where they can raise their families and in security and hospitality. But we also want to make sure that the people that they're electing to office aren't the kind of people who are going to prevent the rest of us from thriving or belonging. That we're going to make sure that this is a community that's welcoming to people of color, that's welcoming to LGBTQIA plus people, that's welcoming to people who are of a variety of faiths or no faiths at all. And we want to make sure that we have a democratic society, not just free and fair elections, but free and fair elections and policies and leaders who meet the needs of everybody who lives here. And that's going to really be the guiding principle of our show, and the voices that we want to raise up and bring on the show, and the issues that we're going to be paying attention to. So
That was excellent. Thank you.
thanks.
And that kind of helps me segue into something I want to touch on very, very briefly. The Dominion lawsuit settlement. I personally would have enjoyed seeing that go to trial, and I'd had the popcorn out watching all the testimony. But we already learned a lot from the depositions that Fox, OANN, all these other extremist, if that's a fair term, these right-wing news outlets knew that the big lie was in fact a big lie. But ratings were more important than democracy, and you can't really have a healthy democracy without a healthy press, without a healthy media, which is part of what motivates me to blog and has motivated me to work with you on this. But I wanted to bring up the Dominion thing because in my mind, I think, and in the minds of like Melissa Cribbins and Dee Dee Murphy and all the election workers at the Coos County Courthouse who work so hard and were so maligned and so abused and so harassed by this group of people, and it so did not deserve to be treated that way. And I just want to applaud them for keeping their heads down and doing the work in spite of all of the all of the abuse, the totally, completely, and undeserved abuse that they had. And I do want to name names. Commissioner Rod Taylor was part of that vocal crowd complaining. A woman named Pam Lewis and Diane Rich, and those two are still trying to raise money, claiming that they're victims of election fraud, which they just are not. And it's sad that they treated those people so badly, and don't have the chops to apologize. Anyway, I think we were going to move on to.
I think we can discuss that a bit, because I think that, okay. We are still in the midst of this trend of election denialism and these false accusations of election fraud that have been leveraged by the GOP across the country to try to disenfranchise voters of color and young voters especially. And the Dominion lawsuit settlement with Fox News does feel like a bit of a vindication for those of us who've been saying from the beginning that not only was Donald Trump lying about the 2020 election, these news media outlets that were reinforcing those lies with more false statements and sending people down these rabbit holes of conspiracy theories and stuff that really ended up nowhere. They all knew that he was lying. They themselves didn't believe it, and they took the position that it was true solely because they were afraid that if they didn't, their viewers would give up on them and switch to channels that would peddle the lies. And and we've seen that affect us locally. And as you were describing, the election fraud conspiracy theory thing just took off on the far right, and it seemed like if anytime they lost an election, that's been the default response. Is not that it was a free and fair election, but obviously if they lost, it must have been fraud. And we've seen that in Arizona, and we've seen that locally here with our elections last year. And of course, Diane Rich and Pam Lewis tried to file a lawsuit against our election workers, stirred up a lot of animosity and false accusations against them. And that's gone nowhere for them, because these elections were free and fair, and they ultimately resulted in the election, unfortunately, the election of Rod Taylor to county commissioner. So it just seems to me that they have to know. It baffles me that they couldn't possibly know that these elections were fair, and that they are just deliberately stirring up this claims of fraud to try to generate outrage and generate interest in elections with their base, who is already pretty distrustful of government, pretty distrustful of even our system, mainly because they don't understand how it works, but leveraging that to try to get people out and voting and active. And I think, knowing that that's a continual part of our community, the election denialism is, we have a high percentage of it in our county, one of the highest percentages in the nation, and that we're going to have to face that. We've got another election coming up in a couple of weeks. We're going to probably face accusations of election denialism, election fraud.
Fraud again,
if the right-wing folks don't get their way. Of course,
Of
if they
course,
do get their way, there won't be any accusations at all.
well, I mean, what's silly about it, Trump won this county. I think he won he got 62% of the vote in Coos County in 2020, and yet they still claimed that that our local
Hmm.
elections offices were
Yeah,
fraudulent.
and that's one of the things we're witnessing from that side of the political aisle, so to speak, is that they're going to say absolutely anything, regardless of whether it's evidence based or not. They're going to say anything that helps their cause because they're not really interested in fairness. They're not really interested in freedom. They're not really interested in the truth. They're really just interested in accumulating and acquiring power.
Yeah.
And I mean that's a pretty cynical perspective to take, but it's the honest. It's an honest assessment of what we're witnessing.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I know when Rod Taylor won the election, he made a point of saying that he was ideologically very different from his predecessor, Melissa Cribbins, and that we would see some big changes. And then the first thing he tried to do was force prayer on people who attended the county commission meetings. And where's the liberty in that? I don't know.
I yeah, it's like we live in different worlds sometimes.
Yeah. Um, but I do think, it's topics like this, and I think Rod Taylor is going to come up quite a bit more. Um, uh, he did form this group, Citizens Restoring Liberty. I feel like liberty has been co-opted. That the word liberty has been co-opted,
Hmm.
just like I feel like the American flag has been co-opted.
Yeah.
um, and but I feel that that's definitely going to come up more and more. I think one of the things that we wanted to talk about also, um, we want to be able to address different needs that we see. My passion is sustainability and social justice. I know you're big on social justice too, and I think we need to talk about inclusivity and understanding. I think we're going to have discussions in the near future about gender, because there seems
Hmm.
to be a whole lot of misunderstanding about, I'm not. I think I have a lot of misunderstanding about gender myself. Um, um, so I feel like that's a really useful topic. Um,
Hmm.
I feel there's a lot of animosity, transphobia, homophobia. Just it's just very disheartening.
Yeah,
And
I think at the heart of it in our community. Well, I mean, we're going to talk about a lot of different issues about that that are part of uh, being part of the Coos community, and I think at the heart of a lot of these kinds of really concerning issues um, is anxiety. One of the things we're going to have to talk about, and probably regularly, is restoring the economic vitality of our area. Because I think underpinning a lot of these concerns and issues, one of the things that that brings people out and makes them so animated in their animosity towards people different than them is the anxiety that they're experiencing in their own lives, whether it's the struggle of living paycheck to paycheck, whether it's the safety of their kids, um, or whether it's this kind of feeling of impending
no,
doom that comes with the kind of cultural transition and economic transition our community is experiencing, and our society at large. And so, we're going to have to talk about all of these issues, um, and I'm excited to talk about them. How the conversations and the challenges our nation faces affects those of us who are living here in this community, and how we can have those conversations here in this community in a way that that addresses those kinds of anxieties and informs people and inspires people, so that people who might otherwise think differently than us, um, can actually recognize that, you know, we're actually working towards their interests and their goals as well. Um, when of course, you know, talking about the cultural changes in our society that are leading to these challenging conversations around gender. I think that'll be a really salient topic probably for a long time. We're going to keep coming back to that. And I think a lot of our audience will learn a lot of new things. And people will have a lot to contribute as well, because I think we all have these, you know, different experiences with
Hmm.
what gender means for us and what it has meant for us through our lives, because we come, especially if we come from different generations, our experiences are going to be distinct. And obviously I'm going to have a different experience of gender than you are, not only because of the generations we came from, but also because of
Right.
you know, where we've been placed in society. Sorry, I keep getting messages on my phone and I don't have it silent, so you might be hearing ding, ding, ding. Um,
Yeah.
but
I'm getting the same thing. So
but yeah, so it's of course we're going to be talking about social justice issues, and but we're also, you know, we're going to be talking about economic vitality. We're going to be talking about the how our culture can grow and thrive, and how we can make this community you know, a place that that means home for everyone who lives here. And that's, I think, important. It's not going to be all just you know, the culture wars. It's going to be about making Coos Bay, the Coos Bay area, Coquille, Coos Bay, North Bend,
mhm.
Charleston, and the surrounding countryside, making this an area where we can all grow and thrive and belong and be safe and
Right.
happy. So, so I think that's going to be one of the exciting things about this project, is going to be able to talk about those things in those ways, and hopefully get our community talking about them, and and hopefully
Well,
change this narrative of conflict.
I think you know that sometimes it's also like, what are definitions? Like, what does it mean? What does sustainability mean in Coos
Hmm.
County? Not Douglas County, not Curry County. Would you? Hey, go.
Is that Mars?
Apologies for the commentary,
Is that Mars?
but that's Mars. Yeah,
Oh, hi Mars.
he's
Love you,
he's
Mars.
somebody's bringing the garbage can back up, and we have to bark at them. Um,
That's great. Well,
and but I also think that we also need to, you know, it's just like defining what pro democracy is, or just democracy. And
mhm,
it's like, as you've shared in a previous conversation, um, sometimes you have to find a myth that you can build a conversation around, and because you know, we may all have different ideas about sustainability, and
mhm, yeah,
you know, leaving something for future generations, you know, and so forth.
yeah.
And
Well, yeah, for
then
sure.
once we define it, then you have to say, okay, we have a definition now, and then how do we go about making it happen? You know,
Hmm. Yeah,
and so
if we're, you know, if we're going to be a pro democratic project, then when we talk about sustainability, it's going to be have to be something that means sustainability for everyone in our society.
right,
Um, and we might then need to expand our idea of what we mean by society, so that we're recognizing everyone who's part of it. Like, for example, I think it might be easy to overlook that Mars is part of our society. When we talk about sustainability, we're going to have to take into consideration Mars interests. You know, that kind of like broad understanding of sustainability. So it's not just about how can we make a particular industry sustainable, or how can we make a particular interest sustainable, but how can we make the whole of our society, and the, you know, the ecological environment that makes our society and community possible.
right,
How can we make it so that all of this can grow and thrive together? And
yeah,
what are the changes, and what are the you know, the hard decisions we need to make to make that possible?
right. And you know, luckily there's a lot of smart people around here that we can invite to discuss it with us for sure.
Yeah.
So um
Yeah, I imagine partnership and other voices are going to be an essential part of our project, just because
It's
the
gotta
two of us,
be.
we don't know it all, and we know a lot of
No.
people in
Now,
our
come on,
community.
speak for yourself. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know it all, and I'm going to be relying mainly on you and maybe some other voices in the community who have experience and education and insight into these kinds of issues, so I can learn, and so that our audience can learn from them.
Yeah.
So.
So I do think one of the things that we've got on our outline here is, partnerships with like Coast Pride and human rights advocates and other community radio stations. Part
Mhm.
of this project is that we're producing programming for our new, soon to be on the air, new community radio station, and KVZN, K Vision,
Mhm.
88.1 FM, and we just have to raise a whole bunch of money, piece of cake. And then I think we've kind of talked about, what our hopes and passions are.
Mhm.
Oh, I think what we should do, if you're up for it, I'd like to preview what some of our next programs are going to be about.
Mhm.
You've done a lot of research on the North Bend School Board, school district races, and that's a worthy topic because there are some people. Um, there's a lot of push for very partisan people to get on these nonpartisan races and
Mhm.
positions, and maybe you could touch on that a little bit if you want to.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure our audience is, we have our ballots already. They've come to us in the mail here, and our audience is probably very interested in this election. I hope you're interested, and it's big enough, enough positions up for election that we could spend a lot of time on it. But I think, the plan is to just focus on this one school board district race, because I think that race alone tells us. It'll give us an opportunity to really get in on the issues at stake in this election, and some of the people active in this election. But I think just looking at that race alone will also inform us about the other positions around the county, and
Right.
what the significance of this race. So I think it's going to be a really important topic to talk about, and I'm really glad to look at the North Bend School District race itself and the people involved in that, because it's such an important race for the future of that community and the future of our whole community, because they're going to be electing or hiring a superintendent. So the next school board will be selecting a superintendent for that school district, and because of the needs of the students and the community there, um, are are at stake in this election, and
Oh,
so that's going to be, of course, one of I think that's our next episode, because the election's coming up,
yeah,
and we need
that
to
election's
get the
coming
word
up,
out. We need
and
to
we're
get the
gonna
word out.
try. We're gonna try and get that episode in the can tomorrow night, or
Hmm.
tomorrow
Or,
sometime.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, or in the morning. I'm free in the morning, so
or
if you
whenever.
got the
Okay,
time.
yeah, morning might work better.
Yeah, and then
Um,
the other salient upcoming issue, of course, is we need to talk about Christian nationalism. We
yes.
have a local event being planned with a lot of far right Christian nationalist speakers coming to it, and and so I think talking about that subject and talking about this event and what that means for our community is important.
Yeah.
So we're coming right out the gate on some topics that I think are controversial. There's a lot of ideological conflict involved, but I think they're critical, and they're timely, and they're important. So we have to cover them, and then we'll maybe get to some more lighthearted fare down the road. Like we can talk about the Wednesday market or things like that maybe in a few weeks. But but right now we have to talk about these really critical things. So that
These
seems
things
like the.
that are coming up right front and center.
Hmm. Yeah.
I agree, and I'm actually I've been doing a lot of research on religious fascism white Christian nationalism, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, a lot of scholarly people who are way smarter than me have also been really concerned about it. So there's some
Yeah.
really, there's a lot of material out there. But we do, we do have some serious threats in the area that go above and beyond the outrage machine, as you call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I do see. It seems to me that that there's a kind of an ongoing theme with those um, with that ideology, I guess, in that everything has to be nostalgic, like everything was better a long time ago, and we have to get back to that being better, and then there has to be a villain for all of our ills, whether it's
Yeah.
homeless people, gay people, immigrants.
Yeah, there's a lot of parallels between that kind of far right. I'm hesitant to call it a religious ideology because because it is really much more of a political cultural ideology that has the veneer of religion. Um,
Right,
but there's a lot of commonality between that ideology and the political ideology of fascism. And scapegoating is definitely a factor of that, and the kind of nostalgic traditionalism is another factor of that. So that'll certainly be part of the conversation when we're talking about Christian nationalism and its alliance with
right.
the fascist movement. So
That's that's of the studies that I've read, particularly those that were like co-authored with um, people, religious people who identify as Christian, for example. They consider this to be not healthy for Christianity.
right. I mean, when we talk about Christian nationalism in a couple of weeks, you're gonna have to hold me in check so that I don't get super nerdy on our audience about theology and spirituality and things like that. Because my training is as a pastor, and I have the education in theology, and I have the education in spirituality and community formation and things like that. And I could really nerd out on people, and it might be like our audience, right? Like, this is not the kind of show that I signed up for. So just make sure to hold me in check when we have that conversation.
I don't know. I mean, I may actually enjoy the nerd out, the nerding out for
Maybe we'll
sure.
space it out over several conversations so they don't overdo it. I can do like
Right.
little bit out at a time. Um,
Well, first of all, I think it's going to be an ongoing problem.
yeah,
And
unfortunately.
I think, and what I also think is that we are going to be, for example, the Proud Boys, or the jury is deliberating now, and on whether the Proud Boys, for example, Enrique Tarrio, who has visited Coos County and
Hmm.
shared his wisdom with certain people, um, and Joey Gibson of Patriot Prayer, and that
Hmm.
whole uh, ilk. Um, the law is coming down on the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers. I mean, the
Hmm.
first conviction for seditious conspiracy in a really long time, and
Yeah.
it really opened the you know floodgates, or crossed the Rubicon, or whatever analogy you want to use. But it was quite a big thing, and democracy is definitely not about what they're doing and what they're saying.
Hmm.
The other thing I hope that we talk about is reasonable gun regulations, or treatment of guns. We've got a county commissioner who wears a gun on his hip. Now, I don't know who he's planning on shooting at the Board of Commission meetings, but just
Yeah,
Just
I
looked.
think that we could have I mean, we're going to probably end up having several conversations about the Second Amendment and its significance in our society today, and the impact of gun legislation or lack thereof on
Yeah.
our society. We have a Supreme Court that just handed out a ruling called Bruin, that's potentially going to change how our states can regulate firearms. Washington State just passed a law that bans certain kinds of assault weapons, which
Hmm.
was intended, I think, directly to figure out how Bruin will affect gun legislation. So that it's inevitably headed to the Supreme Court. So I think so we're going to have some because this conversation around gun ownership and gun rights and gun regulation is so significant for our community that has a lot of firearms in it. I think that's going to have to be a topic. It'll probably come up more than once. So
It's
yeah,
got to
I
come up.
agree.
It's got to come up.
Hmm.
Um, so obviously we want to engage our audience. Uh, this is a fledgling effort, and I hope you'll forgive us for our little goofs and glitches, but we're going to get better as we go. And
Maybe I
no,
imagine that back and forth tangents and things will happen. I have the attention deficit, and so that's going to happen. But yeah, we're just going to be we're going to be who we are on this show. It's going to be fine and fun.
well, my kids all swear. I've never been officially diagnosed, but all my children insist I am ADHD. So maybe one of these days we need to have a show all about that.
But certainly, I could probably find someone who can come talk about it.
And somebody who
Um,
could diagnose me, maybe.
sure, maybe we can do that on the show.
um,
But yeah, hopefully our audience is excited to be along for this project as excited as we are.
yeah, yeah.
And of course,
And
we're going to
and
be, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just bear with us. Israel's not as confident as I am, but I'm very confident that we will get better, and it will be not just informative but entertaining as well.
Hmm.
And I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch and listen. And we're going to try to keep to a schedule at least once a week. And when we get really good at this and we know how to use the software and everything else, we might bump that up a little bit. But um, we'll see. Breaking news alerts.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, we're gonna need our audience to be involved. And we're gonna want to hear from you, whether it's in comment sections, or if we're doing a live show, if you can jump in on the
Right.
show sometimes. And of course, tell your friends about the show, and of course, contribute ideas and thoughts and all of that. I imagine,
Topics that you want us to talk about? Yeah.
yep,
Yeah.
questions that you have, we'll bring those
Uh-huh.
things up. We're going to be pretty responsive to our audience because we want to be inclusive, and we want to have this be a whole community conversation rather than just a dialogue between the two of us.
That's exactly right. Um, and we can even talk about gardening and veggies and
Oh,
stuff sometime.
absolutely. I mean, we're going to have to talk about all of the things that matter to our community, and they're not always going to be the conflict issues. Sometimes they're going to be the fun things that we all get to do.
Yeah,
And this is such a great area to live. We're not going to run out of things to talk about.
that's true. That's true. We won't. Well, okay. I want to thank everybody. I especially want to thank my co-host, Israel, for joining me, and I'm really excited about how this is going to go, and
Hmm.
we will figure out a good way to alert everybody ahead of time when we're going.
Hmm.
Um, we've got a lot of bugs to work out, but I think we're going to make it. So,
Yep.
good night.
Good night, and thanks. And let's hope we get this thing all situated so this recording finally works. All right. Thanks so much.